Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. So, my friends, I was hoping to have a conversation about this little topic of mindfulness, capitalism, and emerging consciousness in this little brief time we have. And honestly, I was wondering how we could even begin to have that conversation, because it feels like it's an important one to have. But I think I have a solution, and I think I can summarize the entire reason that we should focus or perhaps reflect on mindfulness, capitalism, and consciousness in 5 whole seconds. Now, I'm going to say at the beginning here that I need to ask for your forgiveness rather than your permission, because I'm going to use a little bit of an audio-visual that, let's say it's a little bit colorful, okay? But I think it well describes why it's so important for us in this moment in time to reflect on mindfulness, capitalism, and consciousness. All right, so see if you could relate to this.
Oh, fuck!
Right? Right? And I'm imagining you're all laughing because you're not unfamiliar with that, right? Leaving us in a state not unlike this, right? Our brains are scrambled. It's hard to separate the signal from the noise. It's hard to really discern what's urgent from what's important, right? And the danger is, of course, that we fall into this busyness trap. Did you just see that? And if we get too busy at times, it's been described as the busyness trap. This idea from Thoreau, who wrote this, a long time ago, that it's not enough for us to be busy, because so are the ants. The question is, what are we busy about? And when I came across this quote early in my career, it really profoundly affected me, because I had had a 20-year career working in some really extraordinary companies, and I'd worked hard to be there. I'd worked hard to get there. I had done my graduate studies in this stuff, and I had this creeping sense of unhappiness, this creeping sense of stress, burnout, and anxiety, and I didn't know why, right? All I knew is that I was really, really busy doing things. And I increasingly started to have a sense, perhaps, that I was not aligned. There wasn't a sense of perhaps meaning or purpose. I wasn't sure what this was. And eventually, I realized that though I was doing some really cool things in some amazing organizations, working on leadership development, working on culture change and transformation, working in beautiful businesses that were reaching stakeholders across the value chain, it didn't feel fully meaningful. It felt 1 degree of separation away from something that I truly cared about. And 1 degree of separation away from true alignment, from what one truly loves, what I truly loved, was 1 degree of separation too much. And I was on a meditation retreat with one of my dear teachers and friends, John Kabat-Zinn, and I realized in having that experience and that reflection that the full integration of consciousness in all domains of life was the most important work that I could do in my life, and that I was not somehow inhabiting that in the roles that I had taken on. So, fast forward, I eventually left Google, started my own company, Wisdom Labs, and we started doing wonderful work, bringing thriving and mindfulness and compassion, and eventually, within the last year, coming to the Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute, a global nonprofit now, with the mission, really, of enabling 1 billion active practitioners of mindfulness and compassion in order to promote the conditions for world peace. And I can report from the field, never been happier, but it really was a painful process, a 20-year process of me sort of discovering that this isn't working, something's not right in our organizations, and there's an opportunity to align, to true up to what is truly meaningful. And a lot of it started with intentionality, the intentionality to reflect. So I want to share with you a little meditation that actually I learned from John Kabat-Zinn. And it goes like this. It's really simple. Why are you here? So I just like to invite that question for you all in each of your stories, wherever today finds you in this room, or if you happen to be streaming this online. Why are you here? And if you'd like, I'd invite you to close your eyes perhaps, or simply soften the visual field, just allowing yourself to have a felt experience of yourself, connecting for a moment with your mind, with your heart, with your body, whatever that means for you. And consider, why are you here? Why are you here? And as you consider this question, I'd invite you to consider further, why are you really, really here? In this moment, in this place, wherever this moment finds you. And finally, why are you really, really, really here? Whatever arises for you, or nothing at all, simply connecting with this experience with openness, curiosity, kindness. And as we bring this exercise to a close, I just invite you to take 3 slightly deeper breaths at your own pace. And when you're ready, reopening your eyes, rejoining the group, rejoining on the live stream. So whatever came up for you is perfect. And there's an invitation to take whatever came up for you and perhaps offer that up and extend it. Because each of us is part of this larger ecosystem. So what would it mean to notice the water as we're swimming along in this busy world of ours, with this reflection, with this intentionality? What would it mean to notice the water? Notice the experience of the systems and structures, the macro environment in which we live, right? And bringing this quality of mindfulness to consider the system in which we operate. We've talked a lot about technology. We've talked a lot about practice. What about the broader ecosystem which we inhabit? To name an elephant, right? Capitalism. What about that? What effect does that have on the emergence of consciousness that we're considering here? Perhaps more specifically, can capitalism be conscious, right? Or is that an oxymoron? Is that like peacekeeping force, right? Or working vacation, or jumbo shrimp, right? Do these things go together, or are they contradictory? Certainly, there's some data and there are some perspectives that suggest that capitalism has elevated human existence, the standard of living, to a higher point than it's ever been in the entire history of our species. There's evidence to suggest that the poverty levels are lower than they've ever been in the entire history of our species, and that social cooperation is greater than it's ever been. Some amazing things have been enabled through capitalism, right? We've reached to the stars, and I say amazing, depending on your perspective, this is either amazing or absurd, weird or wonderful, depending how you look at it. But private industry taking us beyond our own planet through capitalism. So there are incredible accomplishments, and yet in a conference that's about mindfulness and awareness and consciousness, it's also perhaps necessary to bring it back down to street level. Because if you walked out of this hotel and took a left and walked 1 block, you would walk past brothers and sisters like this, whose home is the street. We can put an electric car that will orbit this galaxy for over 10 million years into orbit on the force of capitalism, and yet we can't take care of our brothers and sisters. And this level of poverty, given our know-how, is a crime. It's a crime. Earlier, I said that our standard of living has been elevated. There is also some truth to that, and there is this crime that's taking place. But the benefits that we enjoy, are they also, if we consider those, are they evenly distributed? Are they something that we all truly enjoy? If any of you happens to have a mobile device on your person, you don't have to raise your hand. That was kind of a rhetorical question. If any of you has a mobile device on your hand, it's likely that there was someone in a facility like this who stood for 12 hours a day turning a screw to assemble your device. Are their standards of living elevated? Now, I don't have any answers to these questions, I'll admit. The invitation here is one of inquiry. It's an invitation to inquiry, right? So are the benefits combined and uneven? What is the cultural logic of capitalism that enables this to be so? Again, not a clear answer for me. It's kind of a wicked problem. We don't fully know the answer. But in a place where we are concerning ourselves with mindfulness and awareness and consciousness, perhaps this is also a question we can be asking ourselves, because with those uneven benefits, is this truly the best we can hope for? Right? If this is our model, if this is the superstructure with which we're going to carry forward with humanity. And by the way, a lot of the technology and all of the things we've been talking about occur within this superstructure, right? What accelerates the development of the technology we were talking about? Capital, right? And I'm not here to suggest that capital is good or bad. I would like to invite the inquiry. So is this model the best we can hope for? Because isn't it a living system, right? If we have these unevenly distributed resources, and we're a living system, and we have brothers and sisters sleeping on the street there, and we have a roadster in orbit up there, it seems like we're only watering one part of the garden and not the other, right? Did anyone see the movie The Black Panther? Anyone see that? Yeah, right? Good. So at the end, King T'Challa, who's the leader of Wakanda, if you haven't seen it, says, it now, at this moment, it seems like the illusions of our division are going to bring us to the brink of destruction. But we all know the truth. More connects us than separates us. And so the wise build bridges, and the foolish build barriers. Right? Yeah. Wise words. Right? So what would it mean for us to build bridges? What would it mean for us to build bridges? Perhaps it's a mindset shift within this superstructure, within this paradigm that we're all inhabiting of capitalism. A mindset shift that goes from one of scarcity to one of abundance, right? From a dog eats dog world to a dog plays with dog world, right? Transitioning from a mindset of scarcity and fear and separateness to one of abundance and compassion, kindness, and connectedness. There's enough resources out there for us to do that, and we have the know-how to be in a dog plays with dog world. And by the way, we just celebrated Chinese Lunar New Year, and it's the year of the dog, y'all. All right. I love this quote from Alice Walker as well, one of my favorite authors. Look closely at the present you're constructing, it should look like the future you're dreaming. So what's the present that you're constructing? I'd like to invite you to further consider this practice. I call it the 3 gates, borrowed somewhat from Rumi and his reflections. But as you consider your life and your work, perhaps consider this question, which Howard Thurman, famous world-changing civil rights activist and spiritual leader, once said, don't ask what you can do, what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, because the world needs more people who come alive, right? So what makes you come alive? What makes you come alive? That's a necessary question. It's not sufficient, right? Because shooting an assault rifle could perhaps make you come alive. For some, that is true, right? The further question perhaps then is, how can you be of service, or how can it be of service, whatever this is that makes you come alive? And yet, that's also not sufficient, because what's of service to some may detract from others, right? So the final question is, that really hinges on compassion, is, does this benefit all? So what makes you come alive? Consider that for a moment. Is it of service? How might it be of service and benefit to all? So have your thoughts and intentions pass through those 3 gates, but perhaps maybe a simpler way to think about this is this question: what best supports the emergence of consciousness? What best supports the emergence of consciousness for each of you? If you can consider that for a moment. If you're streaming this, write it down. If you're sitting here in the room, consider that for yourself. And if you're streaming this, I'd invite you to write that down. And if you're in the room, I just encourage you to turn to someone next to you, and let's just share with each other for a moment. What, for you, best supports this emergence of consciousness? What makes you come alive? What helps benefit all, to be of service and benefit all? What supports the emergence of consciousness? So if you could, just for a moment, share with each other, briefly, the answer to this question for you. Beautiful. And if you could begin to wrap up. All right, my friends. If you could begin to wrap up, please. And if you're streaming this, perhaps you could start to conclude if you've written any of this down for yourself. So go ahead and finish up, please. This is a hard conversation to stop, I know, which is a good sign, Thank your partner and finish up when you can. So this question in many ways, however you answer it, is about really cultivating the conditions, creating that change we want to see, being the change we want to see. So what does it mean for you to cultivate the conditions of this emerging consciousness? For each one of us, it means something different. Perhaps we practice it formally, perhaps informally. This is a picture of Land's End. It's a place that's very dear to me. It's about 3 miles across town, right on the edge of the Pacific. And this is a grove of trees I love to walk in a couple of times a month to connect, to cultivate these conditions, to cultivate that full integration of consciousness in all domains of life. And that's a beautiful thing to do, but the even better news is that we can do this together, right? We have a community to do it. It's here. I don't know if you've had the experience these past days, but do you feel like perhaps your consciousness, your awareness, your sense of vitality, this kind of interconnectedness, do you feel an elevation of consciousness simply being here? Yeah, right? You feel it? It's here, right? It's here, right? You can feel it, right? So we have each other is the wonderful news. Cultivating the conditions are something we can do personally in our own quiet time, in our quiet space, and we have each other. We have this community. And so if you ever have any doubts, when you're in moments of challenge or difficult moments, remember that there's each of us here, right? Connected in these different ways. And so finally, I would say to you, my friends, onward and deeper. Let's do this together. Thank you.